Hi,
I'm Sandy,
and I'm Al.
and we are going to talk about something perfectly brilliant today.
We are the legendary team.
I just feel brilliance coming on soon.
Well,
Here, you should join me up here in the
this is
front row. Come on, front row.
this is the brains of Ask the Pool guy right here. She has built an infrastructure to allow us to share our information online and answer questions, which as a result we've answered a lot of questions over the years for a lot of people, hopefully helping some people. But giving you the credit you deserve, you don't often get the credit for this, but you're the one who, number one, forced me to get in front of the camera and answer those questions, and you're the one that has always been the one compiling the information. And for every question that I answer, you probably answer 2 additional questions that come in. So anyway, I wanted to give her kudos to that.
Well, thanks.
For that. But today, I don't know, it's been on my mind. We haven't done this nearly enough in this weird, historic, crazy world that we live in with this silly lockdown, close down, shut the whole world down for a while over something that, whether you believe or not, is real or not, who knows. But we won't go there. We don't need to get political about it. But this is kind of an opportunity for us to, at least in my mind, some of my thoughts were to think about what the future of our industry looks like, because this is impacting a lot of how people make decisions, why people make decisions. And then I think more importantly for this discussion for me and you is, what, if anything, do you see as different about our future as a result of this? So I thought that would be a good jumping point off, because there's tons of subjects and things to talk about, but thought maybe we would start there. So I'm going to ask you the question first. What do you see? Like, let's just start, let's not talk the history or the future of the industry, but the immediate. How do you see probably most companies in the pool industry being affected by this? What do you see this year being like? You're kind of on the front lines of that, I know, in terms of interacting service-wise and construction-wise. And
So, there's a lot to cover. I'm not quite sure where starting makes sense. This year we've already seen, and I think we'll continue to see, priority shifts in terms of people wanting to be able to stay home and enjoy it. Also, I think we'll be seeing a lot more of what I'm getting a sense of from like the service aspect or things like that. People's priorities personally in dealing with each other, I think, have changed as well. And it's very strange. So I know there's an old saying that money is just a magnifier. It makes you more of what you already are. I think stress and uncertainty also does that with people. I think it just magnifies things within them. So if somebody's kind of happy-go-lucky, I believe that stress would magnify sometimes that and sometimes other things in people. And I think it could also magnify impatience in some, or frustration, or trying to control things that people can't control. So it's really interesting times. One thing, just philosophy that I have been reminded of, and that this is one thing that I am grateful for out of this whole time period. You know, we are in Michigan. It's really an interesting place to be, but kindness matters. Kindness has always mattered, and we have always gone out of our way to make sure that we handle things as best we can. And we've had kind of a guideline on how people need to interact with us in order for us to work well with them. And this past couple of months of uncertainty and things like that have reminded me just how amazing our customers and clients, who become like family, how amazing they are, and how we all have to be reminded, if somebody doesn't fit with what we would hope they would in terms of their attitude or level of patience or impatience and things like that. I have less than a zero tolerance policy for anybody who is not bringing awesome to the table, whether it's somebody we're working with, a supplier, or a potential client or customer. There's no room for bad behavior, and there's no room for that. That's all I will say about that. So that's one thing that has been a
You
philosophy that
you
has been reminding me.
you've
Yeah.
brought several powerful, in my mind, thoughts of just in what you were saying. There were 20 different times I wanted to jump in and say something, but I think there's 2 points that I think are the most significant. Number one, when you're talking about money being a magnifier, this is probably the first thing I was trying to rack my brain as to where this could have applied before, but this is the first time I think in our history, in modern days, whether it's modern is the last 50 years or 100 years, I'm not sure, but where money, just having money didn't solve this.
Yeah.
Just having the money didn't fix a problem. So much of what we needed to do to fix the problem was money based. In this case, like we all got thrust into this thing, whether we liked it or not. And by having money or not having money, didn't solve it. Clearly, having money makes things easier and softens some things. But just purely by having the money was not going to solve this for anybody, because you still couldn't do things, based on where you live, as to what we were able to do or not do. And I know certainly in Michigan, there was a harder lockdown here than most states. And, we're all dealing with the anxieties of that. Like, how do you cope with it? And what do you push? Where do you push? Where do you not push? Where do you, playing all of that. So that's an interesting observation. I think is pretty powerful in terms of, this is not just a thing that money fixes. Usually when you have enough money, you can just overcome most of those things. This was something we all just kind of had to hunker down, uncomfortable as it was. But secondly, on your point of people being awesome, this is a really good place to start to think about what being an awesome customer is. Because fortunately, I don't know how long ago, but many, many years ago, you and I really kind of stumbled into that philosophy that will only work with awesome people, regardless of their address, regardless of their bank account, regardless of the size and scope of the project they wanted. Isn't that probably true? While someone would want this scope project that we do, but if they didn't bring the good, juicy part of being an amazing human being with them, we would walk away from that, and we always have. And that really helps. But this has reminded me more than anything that if you're not an awesome customer, you're not our customer, because we work really hard at being an awesome company. And that goes to the philosophy that we started this whole year with, that if you're an awesome company and you're hired by a crappy customer, nothing's good is going to come. Chances are there's a problem. Or if you're a crappy company that gets hired by a great customer, it's still a crappy situation. Or if you're a crappy customer and you hire a crappy company, it's a bad situation. There's only one case where this works with magic, and it's being a great company and being a great customer and putting those two together. And I think this whole experience has helped remind me of that all the more. That why waste the time in my life, in what's left in the time that I will do this? Why would I want to work with a crappy customer? No amount of anything, that they're not bringing the awesome, it's not worth it.
And figuring out what we valued as a company, I think, was the first step of that, because then it helped us to identify what are some of the things that we would hope that our future customers would have, what would they value. And I do believe that is what brought us on this path. So in terms of starting a year, in terms of the construction projects, we had a couple open from last year, working with some of the best people ever. And then our first two projects planned for this year, which didn't quite get off to the starts that they had been planned for because all the plans went out the window. again, two more sets of just the most amazing, patient, reasonable, upbeat people who value things that we can really wrap our arms around, because we value those things too. So thank you to our construction clients and our service clients and our friends and all of our partners that help make this work, because we've really worked hard to surround ourselves with everybody in all those categories that can make for a yummy experience and a good time working with them, interacting with them. So really, like, thank you guys for being awesome and reminding us what, I mean, awesomeness can take many different forms, but reminding us kind of what that looks like.
As you started out talking about like our first steps on how we arrived at the importance of living and doing this way, I think it's important to note that we didn't start out with charts and graphs that projected X amount of earnings and how much money we needed to make to support lifestyles, and I know that's important to a lot of people. Our journey was a way more organic than that. We certainly have basic needs that everyone else would have, but ours, I don't think, I'm sure for me it wasn't, and I'm sure for you it wasn't, that it wasn't dollar driven, that we have to make so much money to cover leaving here and then going living a lifestyle. So there's a difference if you go to work for money so that you can take the money and then go live a lifestyle and live a life. I guess you could compartmentalize it and say, while I'm suffering here, I can make enough money that I can then take it and then leave this place and go over here and do something with it.
I think a lot of people during this lockdown and work from
Have
home
recognized
had to come face to face
with
that reality, that what you're doing, spending your time doing,
matters all the time.
Necessarily match where your values are.
It's a great point.
Yeah.
In our case, what we do is how we live anyway.
It's
so there wasn't that distinction, that there wasn't separation. And absolutely, people working from home and being thrust in that environment, but trying to do this other thing probably has brought that closer together. And that's probably one of the greatest things that'll come out of this.
Right.
But in our case, it was easy because we live the way we work. Yeah. I mean, it was all about just living a life that's fulfilling in its own right without having it to be lifestyle driven or stuff driven, or it's just sort of experience driven. But the experience happens while we're here, not when we leave here and we go do our things. It's all encompassing, and that probably has come out for a lot of people. In going, boy, I never want to do this again, or it's time for me to reevaluate my life and look at doing something that I can get passionate behind, that I can love. Or, because I'm sure you found out what you liked and really didn't like when you were forced to stay in one place and do a job that, whether if you didn't like it, what are you going to do differently about it? Especially when you brought it into your home space. Now you're in your home space doing this thing you don't like to do.
Do you know what I don't like? I don't like lack of choices of things to do. Like the thought of being in the same place, doing the same thing all day, every day, having nothing but time does not interest me. I was definitely reminded I need challenge, a sense of purpose, some kind of a mountain to climb, whatever that looks like. Not literally a mountain, a metaphorical mountain.
So, a mental mountain, something to stimulate and keep you going.
I think our whole team, though, because we don't have to make that choice. Like you said, somebody decides, okay, I'll suck it up and go to work and do something that I don't enjoy so that I can make money to come home and do something else. Like our team doesn't necessarily have to make that choice, because our team would do everything that we do every day. I mean, whether or not we were paid for it, it's kind of part of our natural default way of being. And I think we discovered that a lot more too.
Well, I think that's something that, as you and I have discovered it, guiding the ship and leading the ship, we've been able to help people understand that this is a way of being. Let's not go to work for
Mm-hmm.
work's sake. Let's go to work for growth's sake, for humanness sake. And the net result of it is you can enjoy anything.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to change your perception about it, or your perspective about it, or your mental framework around it, and stop looking at the physical nature of it. Look at the emotional nature of it,
Yeah.
because it's really fun when you can build when we build really cool things. And you mentioned it this week when you said you were looking at some
The website
you were looking at the website,
and
you're
the
looking at all the
sheer
pictures and things,
amount
and you were
of
saying
coolness.
how the sheer amount of great, cool,
Uh-huh.
amazing things that we
Yeah.
do. And you're right, I had that moment this week, and I told you about it as well, that I was driving along and I was listening to Wayne Dyer. And when I'm driving, I do one of a couple things. Rarely listen to the radio for the radio's sake, but I'll either put in a book on CD, and yes, I'm old school, it's still CDs. I don't just have an app on my phone. I typically will put a CD in. And the genre of what I listen to the most there is westerns, Louis L'Amour westerns. And the reason being, the more I discover it, is number one, Louis L'Amour helped me become a man as I read his books and consumed them. And he was a prolific writer. He wrote 100 and some westerns, and I've read them all many times, and now I've listened to most of them many times as well. But what they do for me is they put me in a creative space. It's like my little disconnect when I need to make sure that my brain stays in a good place. By getting lost in a western, my mind is creating all these images in my head, and it allows me to be creative. So it's either that, or now recently again, it's been listening to other people who I respect, and Wayne Dyer is one of those. Anyway, he was talking about his 10 philosophies of life or something, and he said two statements that really stuck out. Number one is, he said, uh, don't ever get to the end of your life and think, my whole life was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really powerful statement, because most of us get so caught up in life and the stuff and the grind and the emotional and the family and all that stuff, that our lives don't necessarily become what we want them to be. They become a default. It's a result of just the things in your environment pushing you around. So
Mm-hmm.
that was his first statement, was don't get to the end of your life and think, my life was all wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So that had me thinking down a vein of am I in the right place? Because he makes a statement. He said, and I will never be at the end of my life. He has since passed away, but when he made the statement, he said, I will never be in that position, because I know that my life is not wrong. What he's done in his life was the right path for him. And I
Mm-hmm.
had come to that very same conclusion, that this has always been right for me. But then secondly, one of his other statements, and I heard this many years ago, way before him, was, don't die with your music left in you. That we all have a song to write, or we have something to create, or we have something to do that we have a special gift for. That most people want to be creative, but when they look in the world, they see how people are being creative and they go, I can't do that. But much like you picking up a paintbrush, going, I've never been a painter, and you guys ought to see this place.
Mm-hmm.
There are paintings everywhere. It's amazing what's happened. And instead of going, well, I can't be creative like this person or this person or this person, instead your music was in your own style, in your own whatever it is you were doing, and
Mm-hmm.
you've become a very prolific painter, and they're whimsical and they're fun and that's creative
Mm-hmm.
and they're bright colors. And that's an example of, don't let the music die in you. Don't let that go. Let it be a part of your everyday. And those two philosophies they've always been a part of my life, but it was a really nice reminder just to hear him say that. And this whole experience over the last couple months has made me reflect on my career, my 30 some years in the pool industry, and where I've come from, where I'm currently at, and what does the future look like. And at one point, I remember even saying to you, maybe it's time just to be done with construction, because
Mm-hmm.
this was a pause to make me realize what a pain in the neck it was going to be to try to figure out how to get started after all of this. And now our timelines are screwed up and our scheduling screwed up. And while people will be forgiving, I won't be forgiving of myself. I still carry that incredible pressure to get these things to a point that people can enjoy using them, not just looking at them. Because I know what we build, people love to look at and they love to share, even if they're not using them. But to me, it's not worth doing it until they're in it and playing with it. And so that was for me, as I looked at the days ticking by, going, I could be doing this today and that today. We could be moving along in the projects. And it was just stacking up in my brain like, do I ever want to put myself in this position again to feel so crappy about not being able to accomplish something to help other people enjoy their lives? And that's what I look at our pool stuff is we're helping create an environment that people can truly just enjoy their life. Mm-hmm. And doing it consciously so that people can feel good, not just, hey, this is cool, but feel good while they're there. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really important. And I don't want to shortchange that anywhere just because my timeline's been wrecked and it still has to be built so that it's absolutely yummy. Otherwise, was my life worth it? And that's so it kind of goes back to that statement. And the only way that my life worked is having worth lived and not being all wrong is if I can do it that way. If I can do it and not be restrained by the joy of doing it and the joy of people receiving something that is so unexpected. And I think that's something that this whole experience has taught me as well. And as much as for a period of time I thought I'm running away from this, we can do pool service work and make money at it for the rest of our lives. There's always service work out there. I can change pumps and I can do whatever. But you know what? That doesn't make me sing on the inside. It's a functional thing that gets $1 in my pocket so I can go out and do something fun with it. But then that would get back to the way that I don't want to live.
Yeah. Yeah. This has been an interesting start to the Roaring 20s decade.
Oof, not kidding.
The perspective that we had when we did our early podcasts, which there are few. The Roaring 20s was a theme, and Al was convinced they were going to be roaring, and so we explored that a little bit. And then the world just got different, went a little crazy. People who are normally the most optimistic and exuberant people that perhaps got a bit melancholy because the world was so different. I might have done that. I did keep painting.
And very much did that.
You did that. He thought, hey, maybe pool's not a thing anymore. And I just kind of said, okay, let's see what happened.
Well, we weren't going to make any rash decisions and just make any changes.
But it was tough. We've come through a tough time, and the tough time I don't think is over. And the tough time is more mental in a lot of aspects, because this is worldwide. Yet I still to this day don't really know anybody close and personally that has been affected by it. So the catastrophic
physically
changes
as opposed to financially,
the economy and some of the other people with perhaps health issues that they can't have dealt with, and I mean that's a whole nother thing. So what do we do moving forward now that we know? I never in my lifetime would have imagined living through something like this, short of like an extreme war or a conflict or something like that. We've learned enough, I think, about how things like that really change the world and shake it up. But I don't really know that I had a scope of what living through a pandemic or an extreme situation like this looked like. So moving forward, when I always told my kids this, and I think I applied this a bit to our business philosophy. We had to make a couple of decisions just as this was all unfolding, not understanding what was going on, not knowing what the right answer was sometimes. Make the best decision that you can in the moment with the knowledge that you have. And if you learn that it was the right one, keep making more of those. If you learn that you should have chosen differently, then do that. So I think approaching life in that way, I don't think that we're going to see people like planning one thing and not deviating from that moving forward. I think if we collectively have learned something, it's that you've got to be open to things going sideways or making a turn or changing your thought or perspective about something. Just think of all of the people who maybe had a job and they made the money so they could go to like a sports event on the weekend, and maybe all they did was fill up all their weekends with sporting events. Like those left. Mm-hmm. So I don't think people are going to default back into like this one, like I have a hobby and this is my hobby, or I have a career plan and this is my career plan, or whatever it may be. I think we'll see people incorporating more varieties of things into
finding joy in a lot of different things. Yeah. Well, the world will never go back to what it was. And I think we hit on that the other day when, I was listening to a mastermind of people talking about all of their situations. And to me, I was recognizing that I was mourning the loss of the freedoms that I had, mm-hmm. whether real or perceived. They certainly feel like they've been taken away. And I don't know that we'll go back.
No.
And I don't think that it necessarily affects us that much. And while I couldn't have imagined this having happened, this is still nothing in comparison to the things that people have been through. Whether it's the world wars that really uprooted and changed everything about society and everything about everybody. This has been a mental struggle more than physical struggle, just because mm-hmm. really it was the loss of what we knew. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like we were all doomed. It's not like we were dropping like flies and dying, and we weren't. I mean, some people have. I get that.
Yeah.
But this was all of a sudden our world became different so quickly, and it was difficult. And it's still difficult for an awful lot of people to deal with that difference and how quickly the life changes. And I think to me, that's what is most impactful, is how quickly life can change. And like our physical life didn't change. We really didn't stop anything.
Yeah.
Our lives still went on, and we still
coming to the office
we were
every
still
day.
At the office, so we weren't going out working every day. But we were still here. The sky wasn't falling. There was, everything that we had done up to that point, for the most part, we were still doing.
Yeah.
So it's not like all of a sudden our world was shattered and ripped apart and we were trying to struggle and figure out how to survive. Mm-hmm. Instead, it was, how can we mentally prepare ourselves for what survival looks like in the future? Those are two very different things. Looking at survival in the moment today versus preparing for the inevitable potential, maybe kind of sort of change that's going to happen, are two very different things.
Well, so toilet paper hit my radar, and that's really funny because I've had a subscription to toilet paper being delivered for a very long time. And a couple of months before this all happened, I was like, wow, I better slow down my subscription because I was overrun with toilet paper. And then I regretted having slowed that subscription down.
And given some away. And
that just, interesting times.
Mm-hmm. Something, again, you wouldn't have predicted.
Yeah. Well, I do believe that we are also lucky to be in the swimming pool industry because people have learned they want to have enjoyment at home. I mean, our clients have always gotten that, but I think more people's eyes were open to, there's more
the importance
can be done there.
The importance of home base.
Yeah.
Instead of it being, I just happen to live there, but I go do things to live my life. Right. Instead, let's build our own little paradise. I mean,
Yeah.
it's an overused word kind of, but
Yeah.
you know, let's build our own little sanctuary, our own little space.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I do see the future. We talked at the very beginning about what do we see happening. I see a bright future for the pool segment, the pool industry as a whole, because I think it's going to simplify people's lives back to what's important when I get home. How do I create that environment? You know, and we may never go back. A lot of people may end up working from home forever because it makes sense and it saves a lot of money in a lot of cases. It's a way more efficient way to be.
Smart.
And this almost forced us to figure out that efficiency.
Yeah.
So I see this year on the short term, I see from the pool standpoint that many of us in the industry will struggle mentally and emotionally more than physically around accomplishing the things that we need to get done, just because labor is absolutely going to be an issue. And you know, even as things open up here, the supply chains, I mean, we've seen the food end of it, but we haven't seen the impact of the cement industry or any of the concrete or building supply. You know, while that's still robust and okay right now, when we get back to full swing, what happens with steel, what happens with all those things. So I think that the supply chain thing is going to slow a lot of stuff down. And homeowners, as we well know, are going to have to learn to be more patient. Not like they haven't had to be patient all along for all of this, but even to get work done, they're going to have to become more patient.
Some of
we all are.
Simple things that we would have taken for granted or expected to be there, I think those are going to be the things that pop up a little bit more that we're not expecting. Like the ordinary things, like stopping at Home Depot to run in and get
to grab a couple things
piece. You know, at one point we were short some specific connections, and the line, because they were rationing how many people could go in at a time, was, you know, half an hour to stand in line to get into the store. So
to get this one little part.
Some of those things, I think those will be the surprising things that we likely continue to see.
We'll see that for a while. I mean, whatever goes on beyond that, who knows? But even after all the orders are lifted, there's this slow period of everybody still nervous about everything. You're right. It's just going to take time.
Like the motor of the world ground to
almost to a halt. It was humming. It was cruising along, and then it was sputtering almost out.
May have shrugged.
Yeah, likely.
Yeah.
Little Ayn Rand reference there. We like that.
Well, I wasn't going to tell people what it was. No. If they knew, they would get it. And if
then
they don't, and if you don't,
you should get it.
I would recommend finding out what you don't know, because
that's as we move forward, I think that's where consumers will need to be patient with contractors. I think contractors will need to be patient with homeowners. I think supply chains will have to be patient with the demand and all the way around. We're just going to all have to pre-plan a little better, try to do, be thinking a little farther out if possible. And
remember, there's a lot of different types of people in this world.
And there's an awful lot of things that
people may exhibit behaviors that you just really can't wrap your mind around.
We've certainly seen that through this whole experience.
Gotta kind of wish them peace and love where they are, and
love them anyway.
And that they figure that out. That's probably a good note for us to end on.
It is. Love them anyway.
Love them anyway. Yep. So we love you anyway, wherever you are, all of our awesome people. We probably love you more than we express, and more than we've said on.
We certainly love them more than we express, and we should do that more often.
Podcasts and things.
We've been really fortunate to do this for so long and talk to people in this format, in this way. Yeah. And you're right, we probably do not express our gratitude like we should. And in this moment, we're expressing our gratitude for all of you being there all along, supporting us along the way, listening to our ramblings and our philosophies and our ways of life, and showcasing and sharing our crazy business lives with you and all the fun stuff we get to do. So we do appreciate it.
And being your own special form of awesome.
That's right.
Yeah. Thank you guys. We will talk to you again soon.